So this session you need to build the session up to challenge the fittest members. It is a hugely challenging fitness training session, but then you need to spend as much time as you possibly can looking after the weakest members. Try to get the new members to pair up with old founding members, so you get a real, they can do the sales work for you if you like. Yeah. Make sure you know everyone's name, keep it as positive as possible. So one element warm-up. We're looking for consistency and continuity through every session. So we're trying to get the same warm-up at every location, at every session. And this gives the members an opportunity to learn the warm-up, to do it each week, to get to know each other, and they get 5 or 10 minutes to talk to each other before we then move into the dynamic session. So the layout of the warm-up is 12 steps wide, 30 steps long. And every 5 steps I put down a cone. So then the actual warm-up, we do a very simple run, a dynamic stretch and an isometric stretch. So we jog through the grid and then round the edge and back in at 50%. Then you go through a dynamic stretch. So for example, a side squat where you're going sideways, deep squat, a couple of steps, squat again. Then you come back in. And then we do a hamstring stretch, which is the isometric one. So just bouncing into a hamstring and maybe accelerating off. And then the other leg and so on. Then we come back in. So you've done your run, you've done your dynamic stretch, you've done your isometric. When you get back in, we then go back into a run. But we build it from 50% sprint to a 60% sprint. Round the edge, jog gently in. When you get in, a new dynamic stretch. So this one could be facing sideways, twisting, bouncing. And then we come back in, a new isometric stretch. So this one might be a quad stretch followed by a small acceleration and then the other leg. Then you come back in, you go back into your run. So you're now 80%, so beg your pardon, 70% sprint. We need a dynamic exercise. So maybe a walking lunge with a stretch. So first off, just stretching the hips each side. And then maybe you go into a lunge with a twist, so lunging and rotating. And then further forward, you're going lunge and lift. Back in, another isometric exercise. So this time you might do, not entirely isometric, but maybe a high kick. So just stretching the hamstrings off and kicking back to get the hip flexors, and so on. Around the edge, back in, we're now into 80%. See, 80% sprint through, new dynamic stretch. This time maybe side squats the other way, or twisting the other way, or changing directions. Back in, new isometric exercise. So this is high knee over a hurdle, for example. A couple of steps other leg. So just trying, not necessarily isometric, but just taking it a bit more gently. Come back in, 90% sprint. Back in. This time another dynamic stretch. So this time maybe changing direction. So I'm explosive one way, explosive the other. Trying to really get the energy up for the group now. Trying to maybe push them so they can't talk quite so much. Back in, another isometric exercise. This one could be, again, actually we'll go back into a sprint. So build the sprint up to 100% sprints here, and then finish with the last rotational exercise, and so on. So you really need to get the whole body working, building in intensity, 3 or 4 sprints at the end. This whole warm-up should last about 12 minutes every single time. Then we come off, we circle the group up, we dynamic exercise, so just rotating the hips and the twisting the upper body, getting low. And as you're doing that, you then come up and ask everyone to go around their names, so shouting their names out, so even the new people get to know each other. And then we go into a very brief description of this week's session, and I'll be explaining each of those coming forward. So this week's session is based on pyramid fitness training. It's great with cardio, it's great for strength, and it's great to sort of push to that real endurance level and come back off it again. You'll enjoy it, go hard, go fast, work as well as you possibly can. Great, so this is the Miklausic cardio set. It's another really, really good rugby fitness set. We've set out a 50-metre line and a 30-metre line. And what I'm going to get these guys to do is run to the 50-metre line as fast as they can, back in, and then 30-metre line. I've got my stopwatch on me, and they're going to work for 30 seconds to get as far as they can. The goal for them really is to finish it, but if they don't, that's not a problem. And then we wait for another 30 seconds recovery, and then we go into another set. And they're going to do, I think, between 6 and 10 reps of these, so really quite challenging. On the line, go! That's good. So they're running out now, 50-meter turn, in hard. That's good. And you can do this with a really big group of people, so you can have 15 people running out and another 15 people in behind. It's one of those sessions that's very easy to run with big numbers. You've got to tell them the time all the time. So 20 seconds, guys. 8 seconds left. 5. Now I get the other group to just come up onto the line. On the line, go! And they do exactly the same thing. That's the Miklausic set. 10 reps if you can, hard and fast. So this is the pyramid set press-ups. Partners opposite each other, both on hands and toes, please, guys. That's good. So here we're going to get Danny does 1 press-up and rest. He shouts 1, then George does 1. He does 2, 1, 2, George does 2. 1, 2, 3, please. And you guys can stop there. Now we would carry on up to 7 and all the way back down to 1. The key is, as much as possible, the person, when they're resting, they stay on their hands and toes. They don't drop onto their knees or come back and do a bit of this. They're just trying to stay on their hands and toes, so they're resting, but also working the core at the same time. Okay, so this is the Reze square. This is essentially a pyramid shuttle again, but in a square. It's quite a fun, different way of varying the running sets. So what we start with is I've set out a relatively small square. Often we'll use half a football field or half a rugby field, so really trying to challenge the members with this one. I'm going to get them to jog 1 length, jog 1 length, jog 1 length, jog back in. When they get back here, they sprint 1, jog 3. Then they sprint 2, jog 2, sprint 3, jog 1, sprint all 4, sprint 3, jog 2, sorry, sprint 3, jog 1, sprint 2, jog 2, sprint 1, jog 3, jog all 4. So it's quite challenging, quite tough. For the sake of this, and just so you can see the kind of distances we're using on this one, we're just going to jog all 4. Okay, ready guys, go. Just gentle jog. Not quite that gentle. Let's get a gentle trot. And right. That's good, and then right. It's good. When we get back in, these guys would sprint 1, jog 3. You won't now, chaps, that'll do. But that's what we would do. So this is the Erskine set. There's 4 different exercises, and each one is vital that you get the teaching points right. So firstly, we do press up, but I'm going to be giving him some resistance on the shoulder blades. Can you go, George, into press ups? So I just come over him and push my hands down into his shoulder blades, and so he's pushing up, and when he's going down, I'm also giving him some resistance. 20 reps if you can. Onto your back, bud. Feet here, that's good. And this time he's doing sit up, punch, punch. So he sits up, punch, punch. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's good. We do again 20 reps if you can. Now the next one is quite a fun rugby drill. Make sure people have got enough space to do it. On all 4s, George, on hands and toes. Good. So he's on his hands and toes like this. I'm just coming in from the side and I'm trying to roll him over. And he's actually quite strong. He's quite a good ball supporter, and I rest there. After each one of these exercises we swap it over. The final one is hamstring lean. So on your knees, facing out that way. I come in, I support his heels. If the ground is too hard, you might not want to do this because it can be tender on the kneecaps. I can either put some support onto his shoulder or just both hands on the ankles. He's going to push his hips forward far as he can and lean forward at the same time. And what you'll see is just about now his hamstrings are beginning to work and he pulls back. Okay, so he goes far as he can and pulls back. Now if he's really strong, he can drop into a press up and come back up out of it. We'll give him a go. That's good, and That's good. You saw his hips pushed back slightly too much there, so he wants to keep the hips forward as much as he can. Brilliant. Okay, good work. Helping each other. So here we've got pyramid sit-ups, not dissimilar to pyramid press-ups. The boys are just helping each other here by supporting each other's legs. Danny's going to do one sit-up and back down. George does one. It's good. Danny does two. George does two. It's good. Sometimes people like to hold their friends' feet, and we go all the way up to 7 or 8 and back down. Or alternatively, I often start at 6 and then work to 10 and then back down to 6, because those first few small ones can take a while and aren't particularly effective. So we've come to the end of the session. We're looking to do a cool down or a stretch. A cool down, you might want to do a reverse shuttle run, so you go 100% to the longest cone and then decrease in energy as you come down. Then we've hit about 55 minutes of the session. We've got a 5-minute stretch. Frankly, it doesn't have to be that good. You can explain to the members while you're stretching that actually isometric stretches are best done when their muscles are cold. I tend to just do, particularly in the winter when the ground's wet and cold, I do a quick salutation to the sun, or slow salutation to the sun, with a few extra stretches pushed in. You can do any stretch you like, but it needn't be more than about 5 minutes. As I'm going through it, I'll go through it now, but as I'm going through it, I also talk to the members about events coming up and about various things that have been good about the session, that sort of thing. So I tend to ask them to legs wide, roll forward, forehead touches the grass. Obviously you can't get anywhere near the grass, especially if you're as inflexible as I am. Then hands hit the ground, feet go back, hips go high, chin goes low. Stretch that and hold that for longer than I'm going to do it, but not too long. Then hips go high, chin high. That's good. Then I go hips high again and just walk it back until I'm hanging again between the legs. Now I look to go wide and stretch an adductor out, and if you can push them low on that one, even better. If they're struggling with this, on one knee, leg out to the side. Then I come into the middle and the other side. All the time I'm talking to them about events coming up, what's going on at training, who's done particularly well during the session. And maybe I'll do a glute stretch as well, so bring the knee across to one hand and just drop into a glute stretch. Then the other leg, and so on. After I've done both of those, I might look into an adductor stretch, so into one kneeling side, push the hip forward, kneeling side, hand high, and rotate away from that back leg. And again, holding for 30 seconds or so. While I'm in this position, I might go into a hamstring stretch. So that's pretty much it. Maybe finishing with a quad stretch. And I always end the sessions with getting the members as a whole group to face the sun, put their hands on the back of the head, shut the eyes, 3 or 4 long, slow, mindful breaths, just trying to bring them back into the moment, trying to take the energy, the heart rate down a bit. And then we stop if we can get them to clap, and then head home. So hopefully it's feeling really positive at the end of the session.